keeping it sassy up in this biznatchy.
Yeah. Do you remember that? I was just thinking a second ago. Do you remember that Public Enemy album, Fear of a Black Planet?
Well, I do.
It was
kind of freaked me out at the time. I like it more now.
Of course.
At the time, I was afraid of a black planet. Now I'm better with it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, all of that's true. Yeah. I mean, I sort of was the. I guess it's cultural appropriation, but it's just the ultimate douchey, like 19-year-old. Yeah, I wore Public Enemy T-shirts and yeah, boy. But I remember they had a song, and it was Elvis was a hero to some, and it went into like Elvis was a racist.
Shit to me.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's so, and then of course Flavor Flav goes, motherfuck him and John Wayne. And at the time, I felt a little, I guess, conflicted because it was first a classic film fan, but I love Public Enemy.
Yeah, true. Well, no, I had a similar situation over in the punk land that I was dabbling in at the time with MDC, which kind of depended on whatever the album was called at the time. MDC was the name of the band. It was a punk band.
NBC?
MDC.
Okay.
Millions of Dead Cops, Multiple Death Corporation. Every album had a different
Okay.
spin on that kind of thing. But one of their more famous songs was "John Wayne Was a Nazi."
Mm-hmm.
That was a classic.
Well, you know what? I mean, not to give too much credence to MDC or Public Enemy, but I think that my thoughts around John Wayne a little bit in the last few years have been they're kind of right. In that I haven't watched John Wayne in a long time, and in fact, it's probably been a good 5 years since I've seen a John Wayne movie until you suggested the two that we're going to do today.
Do it, yeah.
And it's just a weird position to be in as a co-host of a classic film podcast. To not see much John Wayne in the last few years, but also as much John Wayne as I have seen, to not consider myself a huge fan from the get-go, and then to have that absence from John Wayne for the last few years while other things are going on in the world in my life, and think, you know, he kind of was an asshole. I don't know if he was a Nazi, but like, I don't know if anyone culturally did more to sort of fuck over the image of the Indians as Native Americans, if you will, as fucking, you know, just to be disregarded garbage as John Wayne, man.
This is like one wrinkle in the ball sack, man.
No question about it. He's not alone. He's not
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about all the other things that he did, which we're going to be talking about a little bit today.
John Wayne, I mean, here's the thing, and what surprised me, and I could just say this overall before we get into films, is how much I did actually enjoy him.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking about how much I enjoyed each of these films or him in these films, but I was reminded there's something very comforting about John Wayne, and that he's a prolific motherfucker. He made like 200 movies in his lifetime. Definitely lots of things to say about John Wayne, but what sort of kept me away, I think, a little bit, part of it was that sense like, this guy's kind of a bit of a blemish. I hate to say it. I mean, it's like people who tune in. I'm reaching the wrong demographic because everyone's probably rolling their eyes like, "Oh, come on! I come here for stop it here." And it's like I don't want to infuse too much like politics, whatever. But he's kind of a dick.
Here's the thing. I think we have to treat him a little bit like we did recently with Woody Allen. I mean, he's a troubling figure and a towering figure all at the same time in movies.
Here's the difference. I think I'm eating breakfast at the same time. Is Woody Allen is troubling on his own? John Wayne. Sorry, very unprofessional, is troubling as part of an institutional trouble that now we're starting to question, or some are starting to question. So there was never like a pro-pedophile part of Hollywood.
Well, apparently we're finding out now, maybe.
Yeah, but openly. But there openly was, for years, you know, one of my favorite Humphrey Bogart movies is Also the Night. And the jokes they play on the African American, like, you know, butler and chauffeur or whatever is, yes, boss, and shuffling and all this sort of stuff. So you contend with it and you contextualize it and you go, like, of course, I still love the movie and everything in its place and time. But John Wayne's not like a one or two movies. It's like a whole career about, like, the savage Indian.
Well, it is. So it is that, and at the same time, there's a little bit of. You know, and this is what gets racism through the door a lot. Let's just call racism, okay?
Sure.
Here's what gets racism through the door a lot. Well, he's not that kind of an Indian. So in that sense, John Wayne had he brought his Indians with him.
Right.
He brought his, like, Woody Strode, showed up in a lot of his stuff. I mean, he brought his black performers. He brought with him. He he gave opportunities to these people that were ultimately being like shat on by the film that was being made.
Yeah.
But then these people were able to work.
We get a lot of that in this area, Tom. I sort of grew up in the Fresno Central Valley area, but we get a version of it, and maybe you'll see it more as you hear, of like, oh, these Mexicans would be much worse off, believe you, if they weren't living in that shed for less than minimum wage that I made them. And it's like, yeah, there's truth to that, certainly, but you're still a dick.
Right.